A warm good afternoon to all. Welcome to the international webinar on best practices in research organized by the Research Committee and IQAC of St. Bookman's College, Chinganashiri. Today we have the inaugural speech and the session by Dr. Suresh Sipillai. Let me invite Dr. Jo Prasad Matthew, the Research Director of St. Bookman's College, to propose.
Respected principals, vice principals, speaker of the webinar, Dr. Suresh Sipillai, colleagues, PG students, research scholars and teachers from different institutions. Today we start the much awaited webinar series titled International Webinar on Best Practices in Research, Research Proposal, Research Publication and Research Ethics, organized by SB College Research Committee and IQAC. The new educational policy and the UGC regulations 2018 has put forward various measures to enhance the quality of higher education and research output. The webinar aims to make aware the researchers about the current trends and needs for carrying out good research and quality output in a timely manner. Each talk in the series aims at providing useful tips and information for making good research proposal, research publication in high-impact journals, and the do's and don'ts in research. With this small remarks, let me welcome the speaker of the day, Dr. Suresh Sipillai. He is a well-known scientist, entrepreneur, and speaker. He is the head of the Nanotechnology and Bioengineering Research Group, Institute of Technology, Sligo, Ireland. Dr. Suresh is also the Associate Editor of the Chemical Engineering Journal. I am happy and thankful that in spite of his busy schedule, Dr. Suresh is kind enough to accept our invitation and find time to spare a few hours with us to share his views on how to get research papers published in good journals from the viewpoint of a journal editor. I extend you, sir, our warm welcome on behalf of St. Bookman's College Research Committee and IQAC of the college. Principal Dr. Jacob Matthew is the motivational force behind this webinar. As a former research director of the college, his advices are always valuable in organizing this seminar. I extend a hearty welcome to you, sir. I also extend a heartiest welcome to all the participants of the webinar. Special thanks to the technical team, Dr. Rubin, Dr. Philip, Jobin and Prenu, and all my colleagues in the research committee for arranging the webinar effortlessly. Thank you and wish you all a wonderful session ahead.
Thank you, sir. Next, I invite Jacob Matthew, Principal, St. Bookman's College, for the inauguration of this webinar and to share a few words.
Thank you, Dr. Philip Litto, Dr. Jo Prasad, the Director Research, Vice Principals, guest of the day, Dr. Suresh Sipillai, the participants. I'm very happy and extremely happy that our research committee took my words seriously and organized a wonderful web series on research methodology and related issues. I welcome our guest of the day, Suresh Sipillai, to St. Bookman's campus, of course, virtually, and I hope we meet soon in future also, because we are going to celebrate our centenary next year, and we expect the experts like you can visit our campus and do some serious discussion on this topic or the next, advanced topic. I personally welcome you, sir, to the SB College campus. I am sure that this topic which he is going to discuss will definitely help our researchers and all those participants who are joined in this meeting. To share my thoughts with you, frankly, that we are actually facing a very serious issue, that is COVID pandemic. And we all know that whenever there is a problem, real problem comes up, everybody, all newspaper or all people turns to the scientist. So now the world is actually eagerly waiting for some comments from scientists who are doing research in this COVID and related issue. But it will go from the main news, etc., once the issue is over. So my personal view is that should not happen. The media and other discussing forum should discuss science and should earmark a definite time for discussing the issues related to science. Then only our society and our will grow to next higher level. I hope all success to this program initiated by the research committee of St. Berkman's College and IQSC. All the very best, and once again I welcome Dr. Suresh C. Pillai to this St. Berkman's campus. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Before we go into the talk, brief introduction on Professor Suresh C. Pillai, the head of Nanotechnology and Bioengineering Division at Institute of Technology at Sligo in Ireland. Professor Suresh obtained his PhD in the area of nanotechnology from Trinity College Dublin and performed his postdoctoral research at Caltech in USA. He is the recipient of Boyle-Higgins Award 2019 from the Institute of Chemistry of Ireland and is an elected fellow of the UK's Royal Microscopical Society and the Institute of Materials, Minerals and Mining. Professor Suresh has acquired more than 5 million euros directly as R&D funding. He has published several scientific articles in leading peer-reviewed journals and has contributed to several book chapters, has presented in more than 40 international conferences. He has 2 US patents and 1 UK patent to his credit. And his research work was featured in various international media like BBC World, Times UK, The Guardian, etc. One of the nanomaterials-based environmental technology developed by his research team was selected as one among the 50 innovative technologies at the first innovation convention organized by the European Commission. Moreover, Professor Pillai is an associate editor of the Chemical Engineering Journal and is on the editorial board member. Is an editorial board member of Applied Catalysis, the Journal of Elsevier. Professor Pillai, welcome to this speech.
Can you see the presentation? Thank you, Principal, for the kind introduction, and thanks, Joe Prasad, for the invitation to give the inaugural talk. It's my pleasure to see you all. I know that you are in different stages of your research career. So what I'm going to talk today is how to get your paper accepted in a good journal. So I'll start with my own experience first. As a researcher, as a research student, started to write his paper, and then go on my experience as an editor in my later stage of my career. On a cold morning in 2000, almost 20 years ago, I was walking through the corridors of Trinity College Dublin, where I did my PhD. And I met Professor John Kelly, was coming just opposite to me. And he asked me, Suresh, how is everything going? And I told John, everything is going fine. And I had a bunch of electron micrographs with me. And then I showed those electron micrographs to John, Professor Kelly. And he told me that this looks very interesting. Come to my office. Let's have a chat. So I went over to his office. And we had a chat about 15 minutes, going through all the micrographs, its procedure, how to develop it, all this kind of thing. He said, that's very interesting. Let us write it as a paper. Let us publish it in a good journal. I was getting nervous at that stage. I had a couple of co-authored publications before, but I never wrote my own paper. Looking into my face, he realized that I was nervous. He told me that, Suresh, I'm going to give you a few tips on how to write a paper. So initially he told me that the starting point would be read good papers from other journals or journals of interest. Download the other guidelines. Identify a few good journals. Then he told me that write down the procedure first. You already know that. So look into some standard journals and see that how they have done. So start from there and put all the diagrams into a template or into a Word document. So that is the starting point. And he told me that write like a story. Every paper is like a short story. I asked, short story? Writing a paper is like a novel or a short story? Yeah, that's it. And then he told me that the first part of your paper or publication should be understandable by your grandmother. I told him that my grandmother don't understand English. Now he told me that, Suresh, the point is that a lay person should understand the first paragraph of your publication or thesis or whatever it is. Then only you can attract a wide range of audience. So that I was thinking about that, how to write a paper like a story. So this is John's own word. He said that writing a research paper is an art. It's almost like writing a screenplay for a movie. So by this end of this talk, many of you will become either good writers of your own publications, or you will be screenplay writers of a movie, or you can write a short story. So, how to write a research paper like a story? So let us start with this popular movie Titanic. I'm sure that most of you might have seen it. So the story is about a ship traveling from Liverpool, then to Cork, the west of Ireland, and then to America. So Rose, a 17-year-old girl, traveling with her fiancé and her mother. Carl Hockley is her fiancé there. So they were traveling in the first class. And Rose's mother, Ruth, thought that if they married together, their family problems can be sorted. And Rose wasn't impressed with that. She wasn't fully in love with Carl. After a series of arguments, Rose decided to suicide from the deck of the ship. And after that, what happened? A nice gentleman called Jack came over and saved her life. So this is the starting of, and you know what happened after that. So the ship travels over the sea and then it hits an iceberg. So that is the thread of the story. So the story thread is the ship, Jack, Rose, their romance, and collision with an iceberg. So it is the screenplay writer's job is to make it as a movie with some life experience, adding some spice into it. If you just make a movie with just ship, its collision with an iceberg, it will look like, it wouldn't look like a movie. It would more look like a documentary. So that is the screenplayer's job, to make it as a nice movie. So as scientists, when we write publications, we have to have a number of experiences in there so that people can connect. And also a story has a number of sub-stories as well. Look into the Titanic. There are a number of sub-stories in it. Edward John Smith, the captain planning his final voyage before his retiring. Rose's fiancé, Carl Hockley, and her mother Ruth. Bruce Ismay, a rich, ignorant upperclassman, and many other characters and events. So that is how it appears as a good movie. It's not only the main story, but it has a lot of sub-stories where we can connect our life with. So where would you connect? Because different people connect their life with different part of the movie. If you watch any movie, certain part will be attached to your life. So different people connect their life with different events in the story. And there should be a logical progression as well. There should be a progression from one story to the other, and there should be a connection between the sub-stories as well. So that is exactly the way we should write the research papers. There should be a main thread, and there should be a number of sub-stories. So that is what we will be discussing in the few minutes. What would be the main story in your paper, and what would be the sub-stories. So in the next few minutes, I'm going to show how to learn to write a paper like a story. Your paper versus the movie screenplay. Let us look into a paper, for example. This is a paper written by one of my PhD students, my first PhD student, Dr. Pradeepan Periyat. He is a professor in Calicut University now. So let us see, and this paper got a lot of citations, a lot of attraction, and a lot of attention in the past several years. So Pradeepan prepared this material And this paper was published in the Journal of American Chemical Society Journal, the Journal of Physical Chemistry C. Pradeepan prepared this material. Very simple procedure. He used titanium isopropoxide, sulfuric acid, and mixed it together. And then he developed a sulfur-doped titanium dioxide. So the main thread, and then he tested the photocatalytic activity, and it showed improved photocatalytic activity compared to pure titanium dioxide. So the main thread of the story is high temperature stability, because there were a number of photocatalysts reported. There were a number of high temperature stable materials reported, but this particular compound showed two properties. One is high temperature stability and also sunlight driven photocatalytic activity. Don't look into the technicality of the paper. Just understand that this paper showed two properties, and the most important property was the high temperature stability. So that was unique. So the main story of this paper was development of the high temperature stable photocatalysts. So that was the main part of the story. And then the main sub-story is the visible light activity. So if you compare this with Titanic movie, so this is the main part of the story. So the ship traveling from Liverpool, then to Cork, and then to America, and then hits an iceberg. So that's the main story. And the sub-stories and the romance, those are the main important sub-stories or main part of the main story. The romance of Jack and Rose. And there will be a number of sub-stories. X-ray photoelectron spectroscopy. So we did X-ray photoelectron spectroscopy to see what would be the impact of sulfur into titanium dioxide. And then Pradeepan found that sulfur can have three different oxidation states: S2 minus, S4 plus, and S6 plus. And this particular case, the sulfur was doped as S6 plus. So that was an important part of the sub-story. Then he carried out XRD, and he made a story out of that. A sub-story out of the XRD. So this is like the captain story if you want to relate to the movie Titanic. So there were a number of sub-stories in that paper. Not only the main story, like the Titanic, a number of sub-stories were associated to that. For example, if a person working on XPS, X-ray photoelectron spectroscopy, he only want to or she only wants to see this part of the story. Or somebody working on high temperature materials and X-ray diffraction, she may be interested to see more on this work. So different people connect with different part of the story. Like Titanic. If you are a teenage or late teenager or early 20s, if you are seeing Titanic, you will only be looking at Jack and Rose, their romance. If you are a semi-retired or retired person, you will be looking at the captain, his life, when he is going to retire. What would be his life? If you're an engineer, you'll be looking at the engineering part of the design of the ship. If you are a young engineer, you'll be looking both. You'll be looking at the romance of Jack and Rose and also looking at the other part of. So different part of the paper can attract different type of people. It can attract general audience. It can attract specialized audience in different part of people working in different areas of research. So when you write a paper, you should write it like a story. It has a main thread and also a number of sub-stories. And I mentioned that this work was cited significantly. Is it because of the main story or is it because of the sub-stories? So I did some analysis. I looked into the citations and I found that the answer is both. However, a significant number of people cited this work because of the sub-story 2, where XPS, X-ray photoelectron spectroscopy, was described, because that was one of the first studies detailing the XPS. And that is why it got a lot of attention. So maybe one of the characterization technique in your study may attract a lot of attention. Not necessarily the main part of the story. And in some cases, the main part of the story could also attract a lot of attention. So you need to have a main story and a number of sub-stories. That is why every paper should look like a screenplay for a movie or a short story. So you can write a paper like directing a movie. So you have to focus on the story. There should be a logical progression. You should keep a suspense. There should be a lot of sub-stories, a good conclusion, and a takeaway message. So look back on Pradeepan's paper, which we discussed. The focus on the story is high temperature stable titanium dioxide, and there's a logical progression because he prepared a material and then he characterized it in a kind of logical progression, like in a way it is attached, one is attached to the other, because he carried out the X-ray diffraction first to see that whether it is crystallized well or at what temperature it changes from one phase to another, and what temperature it gives the high temperature stable anodized phase, so and so. So there is a logical progression in that work. So as a writer of the paper or as a director of a movie, you should see that progression. How should I continue? Where should I start? Will there be a connection between each sections? You should also keep a suspense. You need to have a lot of sub-stories. The sub-stories which we discussed were XPS, X-ray photoelectron spectroscopy, XRD, like that. And there should be a conclusion and a take-home message or takeaway message. What was the takeaway message from Pradeepan's paper? If you dope with sulfur, you can get high temperature stability as well as visible light photocatalytic activity. That was the takeaway message. So the ingredients of a good movie, like a good paper. So the ingredients of a good movie is a good story, connecting to your life, and the logical progression, a good conclusion, and a take-home message. So these are all the ingredients of a good movie. So what would be the ingredients of a good journal paper? Novelty and innovation. What do you mean by that? The word should be innovative or novel. So this is what something you are contributing to the scientific world. And the novelty can be a competitive advantage of the current techniques. For example, if you have prepared the materials in the conventional way. For example, you are using a traditional or conventional laboratory method, and you are heating it in a furnace for 12 hours to make it crystallized. You are heating it up, cooling it down. The overall process could take up to 24 hours. And if you introduce a new method where you use the kitchen microwave oven or the domestic microwave oven to make the same material in a different way. So rather than using the conventional technique, you use the microwave oven to make the process much faster. For example, the conventional process took around 24 hours. The microwave took only 10 minutes to make the material. Even though there is no novelty in the material, but the preparation route is novel. And also, so that can be the novelty of the work. And in your paper, you need to have a good coverage of previous literature. Why would you do a good literature search? Because that is how you find the gap. Every good paper has a good literature search. So you can see from a good paper that they have covered all the important previous references or previous literature. And obviously you need to have good data. And that data could be interpreted and also analyzed with strong literature support. You need to have a thought-provoking discussion. And there should be a meaningful conclusion. So just want to break it and then check if everything going okay. Can you hear it?
Yes, sir, we can hear you. Yes, sir, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you very much. A thought-provoking discussion and meaningful conclusions. So let us go back into the peer review process. So what is peer review means? Peer review means it is reviewed by your peers or experts in that area. The peer review go back as far as 17th century, when it was known as the Inquisition of the Holy Roman and Catholic Church. So that is where the peer review started. So where would you start? When you are writing a peer review paper, where would you start? That is the biggest dilemma every research student faces. How can I start? So as I mentioned in the first part of the talk, so the tip my supervisor gave me was start with the procedure, because you already know that. Put all the graphs, figures, and then fill it. So it is always easy to start from somewhere. So once you wrote your procedure, your synthetic protocols, your graphs, And then you can start writing, filling the gap. Then you can go back and then start writing an introduction. You can write a good literature report. You can write the objectives. Then you can come back and then you can write the discussion part. Then conclusion. The last part would be the abstract. Abstract should be written last. And also then you can write a good title. Okay, so that should be the progress, the way you should write. Rather than writing the title first, abstract second, introduction next. That may not be possible. So write first. Don't even think about editing it. Include all the possible resources there. Write first and edit later. Okay, make a first draft and then edit it. I don't know if you have heard this. Stories are not written, but they are rewritten. You may have seen that good story writers, if you enter into a good story writer's room, you can see a lot of papers scattered there because they're always revising and rewriting it. And every time you rewrite, the next draft would be a better draft than the previous. So always remember that good stories are not written, it's always rewritten by the same person. Talk to a good story writer. Most of the stories are revised, and then rewritten. So good papers are rewritten. For example, many of my students or researchers rewrite and revise 30 to 40 times. Sometimes it could be 10 times, but in many cases, it would be 30 or 40 times because we save it as draft number 1, draft number 2, draft number 3, like that. So in many cases, it would be draft number 40 by the time we decide that we should send it to a journal. Okay, so remember that you have to revise and rewrite. And every time you rewrite it, it will be a better draft. So why should you publish? This is the question every researcher would ask. And it's your social responsibility to transfer knowledge. Who is funding your research? In most cases, the government. And you have a social responsibility to pay back that knowledge and also transfer that knowledge to the next generation. It's also a part of the scientific research process, and it's important for the graduation and career progression and your contributions towards the scientific world. And also to advance the knowledge and understanding of a scientific area. For example, biotechnology or nanotechnology. Okay, that is to advance the knowledge and understanding of a new scientific area. Always remember this. Research not communicated is not research done. If you don't communicate, if you don't publish, consider it as not done. How would the world know that you have done that work? So I always recommend researchers and students to publish it. Otherwise, it is not considered as it is done. So research not communicated is research not done. And this is the question people always ask, how about negative results? Negative results should also be published. Negative results are also results. Because that is how you can let others know that if you go through that route, that wouldn't work. Otherwise, how would others know? So if you spend 6 years working on a compound on a specific route, and then it didn't work. If you think that you have carried out the work in the right way, everything was right, the scientific protocol was right, the theory behind was right, but it didn't work. And you should understand why it didn't work, then you should publish it. So that is why negative results are also results. You may not be able to publish it in a high impact journal, but still you can publish. There are certain journals fully dedicated for publishing negative results, and also you can think of publishing in an open access journal. Still, you should let the world know that that didn't work. But you have to make sure that you have done everything right. And what should you publish? You can publish results of new and original results, original work, new methods, as we discussed earlier, the microwave or sonochemical process. Conventionally, it was prepared in a different route. You have developed a new route, and that can be published. You can also publish reviews or feature articles. You can also publish new technical updates, a new tool to analyze materials, or a new bacteria you found out recently, or a new butterfly. Okay, so these can be technical updates. You can also apply the same thing in social science too. And even more important, you should also be aware that what should not be published. Duplications of work of your own or others' previous work, inconclusive results, reports with no novelty or innovation. It's waste of time. It's waste of your time. It's a waste of the editor's time, the waste of reviewer's time, and if it's published, it will be the waste of the reader's time too. So before you even think about why should you publish or what should be published, you should think about what should not be published. Ethics and plagiarism. Before even writing the paper or doing research, my recommendation is everybody should do a course on ethics and plagiarism. So in the next few minutes, I'm going to give a few examples or how to address plagiarism and how to write papers ethically. And before that, we should understand what is meant by plagiarism. In simple words, it's stealing. It's stealing somebody's ideas or copying something without their permission, or getting a figure without giving proper acknowledgement. One can steal everything from an artist except their talent. You are stealing a part of their talent. So plagiarism means stealing the talent. Plagiarism means it's kidnapping. Latin, plagium means it's kidnapping. So it's kidnapping of ideas, or it is talent theft or intellectual theft. And it is considered as a serious scientific misconduct. So what is scientific misconduct? So scientific misconduct means it's fabrication, falsification, plagiarism, or other practices that seriously deviate from those that are commonly accepted within the scientific community for proposing, conducting, or reporting research. So scientific misconduct include fabrication. So you fabricate results. You're getting results without any evidence. You're making up results. Falsification, false ideas, and also plagiarism, copying from others' work. There are two types of plagiarism. One is plagiarizing somebody else's work, and also other called self-plagiarism. It's copying your own work from a previous paper. Plagiarism means it's intellectual theft from other people or other people's ideas, processes, or text without giving correct credit, and with the intention to present as your own property. Self-plagiarism means appropriation of your own ideas or text and passing it as original work. So you have written a paper, and rather than rewriting it, you are copying the procedure from the previous paper to the next paper. That is also self-plagiarism. Or you are copying your introduction part, even though the work is different. You're copying the full introduction part and copying it for the next paper without changing it. That is also a part of self-plagiarism. It is literary theft. It is taking words, images, processes, structure, design, ideas of others and presenting it as your own. And it is a very serious ethical misconduct. A number of popular scientists were caught on plagiarizing work. If you Google it, or if you go to a science magazine or search there, you can find a lot of stories where people plagiarized. It's a famous Harvard economist, famous scientist. Okay, so it could happen anybody if you don't put, or if you are not careful enough. Some of could be careless mistakes. You copy and pasted from a document, and then you went for a coffee and came back and you forgot about that. Still it is plagiarized under the eyes of a scrutinizer or a reviewer. You cannot say that I forgot that. So take every steps to prevent plagiarism. So it could be different data plagiarism. You are stealing data from somebody else, or stealing words and phrases. It could be ideas and concepts. And it has various amounts and it has different severity. It's also depending on how much someone's work was taken. A word, couple of words, a few lines, a paragraph, pages, the full article. So the severity will go up from words, lines, paragraphs, pages, and the full article, like that. And also it's important what was copied, the results, methods, the introduction section, etc. Okay, as an editor, this is what I look into the journal portal first. What is the similarity? The authenticate report will tell you exactly where it was copied. So you can see that in this particular paper, 3% was copied from somewhere, and another 3% was copied from another journal, 2% was copied from another journal, like that. So the editor will know where exactly it was copied using Authenticate. If you have any software such as Authenticate or Turnitin, before even submit to a journal, you should check it. You should check either Authenticate or Turnitin to make sure that there is no plagiarism in your paper. The next important thing would be where to publish. And the things to be considered as impact of the journal. And also possible future citations. What does that mean? There's no point in publishing your paper in a journal where you don't get any readers. So if you have developed a new catalyst, for example, the most appropriate journal would be a catalytic journal. Even though you have developed a material, which is a catalyst. So you should consider a number of things such as the impact factor, as also the possible future citation, where your paper will be cited more, or where your paper will be read more, are also important. What is the impact factor of a journal? It's a measure of the average number of citations to the recent articles published in a particular journal. For example, if you're looking into 2018 impact factor, it's A over B. A is the number of times the article cited divided the total number of papers published. Or 2018 impact factor means the number of citations it got in the year 2016 and 2017, were cited by index journals during 2018, and also B, the papers published, the total number of papers published in 2016 and 2017. So the impact factor of 2018 is the total number of citations it got divided by the total papers published. For example, if you want to calculate 2018 impact factor, the whole publications from that journal got 800 citations in 2016 and 17. And they published 200 articles. So 800 citations over 200 articles. And that will give 4. So impact factor of that journal will be 4. So if it has got 1600 citations and 200 articles, the impact factor would be 8. Like that. Or in other case, if they have published 800 articles and it got 800 citations, the impact factor would be 1. So by looking at the impact factor of the journal, you can see how impactful is the journal. How many papers are cited from that journal. So that could be consistent over the past few years, and that the trend is going to be the same for the next few years as well. You wouldn't expect a significant change in that particular type of journal. So the impact factor of the journal will give you a good idea about the standard of the journal. So how to send papers based on the impact factor of the journal? Should I send my next paper to Science or Nature, or should I send it to another journal which has an impact factor of 3 or 4? This is cartoon showing high impact factor is the kind of law of gravity. That's Nature or Science. And then the next is oranges also follow the laws of gravity. That is a low impact factor journal. So peer review process. So when you submit a paper to a journal's office or the journal's editorial office, a few things will happen there. First, the editorial assistants will look into it to make sure that the English is right. It has all the guidelines followed. If it's not, it is directly rejected and send it back to you. Sometimes with a note saying that this is not based on the guideline, you haven't included the guidelines, or sorry, highlights, or you haven't included the table of contents figure, your figure number is wrongly given, or the references are not put in the right order. So without even going to the editor, you might get an email from the editorial office. Some cases it could be rejected, saying that it hasn't followed the guideline. So you have to follow the guidelines of the journal. Very important. So once that is satisfied, the editor reviews the paper, a quick glance, and then assign to the associate editor. And then the editor or associate editor assign that papers to the peer reviewers. So when you submit the paper, if it has all the basic requirements, the associate editor will assign to reviewers and then collect the reviewers' recommendations. And then usually they will go for 4 or 5 reviewers in many cases. And rarely it will go to 2 reviewers, but in most cases there will be 3 to 4 reviewers. In some cases there could be up to 6 or 7 reviewers. It's depending on the journal, but generally there will be 3 to 4 reviewers. And then based on the reviewer decision or reviewer recommendations, the editor make a decision where to like either major revision, minor revision, or reject or accept. Okay, so rarely it will be accepted after the first review, but in most cases it will be a minor revision or a major revision, or in many cases it will be a reject. So where to start? So if you haven't written a paper before, the best place to start is to start reading good papers. And also you should consider where would you be publishing it. In social science or engineering, you need to identify the journal. Example, the chemical engineering journal, ACS Catalysis, or Business Progress, or Journal of Social Science, like that. Okay, so you need to have a lot of preparations before even thinking about writing a paper. You might have heard this from Benjamin Franklin: by failing to prepare, you are preparing to fail. And a number of questions to be asked. We discussed this earlier. What is the novelty? What are the innovations? Is it a complete study? Any gaps in your research? What are the objectives? You need to be clear out all the objectives of the work. Do I have solutions for all the research questions? If all yes, then you can start writing the paper. And you need to identify the audience before even you think about which journal you should be considering to send it. Identify your audience. Who will read your paper? Look at your own references, and that will give you an idea where your peers have previously published. If you have a Journal of Material Science cited 10 times in your paper, that may be the right choice, or a similar journal, or materials chemistry, or chemical engineering journal. Then you can look into the impact factor of the journal, and also the possibility to get more citations. So the general structure of a full article is a title, authors, abstract, keywords, introduction, the methods, experiments, results and discussion, conclusions, acknowledgement, references, and in some cases, supplementary materials, if any. But that is not the way you write the paper. This is the way you see in a journal. But when you start writing the paper, you can put the figures and tables, and also, as I mentioned earlier, you can put the methods. You already know that. So write it in your own words. Put the methods first, then put all the figures and tables. That is the results. So based on that results, you can write the discussions. Then you can write the conclusions, introduction, references, abstract, keywords, title, and TOC and highlights, etc. So that is how you start writing the paper. It's an art. Writing a paper is an art. It's like writing a story, writing a short story, or a novel, or a movie screenplay. And the paper is grammatically sound. There shouldn't be any typos. Very important. Okay, and should resonate with the TOC of the image provided. And don't write long titles. Short titles usually attract more citations. Meaningful titles. Okay, short and meaningful titles usually attract more citations. Avoid terms such as enhanced, first ever, or superior. You can use that, but you have to have proper justifications for that. And the paper can be just rejected based on that. Okay, if you don't show the significant enhancement there, the paper can be rejected. And you need to have good justification or appropriate justifications for phrases such as highly efficient, green, environmental benign, etc. You need to have appropriate or proper justification for these kind of phrases in the title. Why title is important? Because editors first read the title. As an editor, that's the first thing I read. Then I go to the abstract. And also the readers. How would you select papers? If you are doing your literature search, how would you select your paper? By reading the title first, isn't it? So the title is very, very important. It's probably the most important part of the paper. So this is what one of the editors of a journal says. American Chemical Society journal says. Usually, I have a quick look at the title. If interested, then I go to the abstract. If it's not an interesting title, I just forget it. That's the way many people think. Think about you. That's the way you think, isn't it? When you read the paper for your literature search, if the title is not interesting, you just forget it. You don't even read the abstract. The next important part is the abstract. That is the most important part of our editors and reviewers. And that's the pitch. It should stand alone. You need to explain why this work is important. Be specific and straightforward. Full summary of your work, and should be 250 to 500 words. you should give the proper keywords. That is, and also make sure that your keywords will increase your search chances. What does that mean? So if you have, for example, the word photocatalyst, for example, you have explained the term photocatalyst already in the abstract. There is no point in giving that again in the keyword. You can give photocatalysis, because if somebody is searching for photocatalysis, they can also get that paper. Because in many cases, the abstract and keywords and the title are open for searches. The content of the paper may not come for search unless it is open access. So in order to increase your chances, search chances, you should consider giving a different keyword, what similar meaning in the abstract. So the introduction, background of the study, what is published so far, what is missing, the novelty, and the objectives. Okay, so by reading the paper, the ingredients are, sorry, for writing the introduction, the ingredients are background of the study, what is published so far, what is missing, novelty, objectives. For example, if you're working on water disinfection, for example, you came up with a new technology for water disinfection. Okay, so what would be the background? You can say that over 1 billion people lack access to clean water. That's a fact. And 1 million people die, or close to 1 million people die every year because of diarrhea or unsafe drinking of water. What is published so far? What are the technologies tried? So chlorination was tried, different type of disinfectants tried. However, these are you have to address the disadvantages. For example, you can say that the chlorination wouldn't kill all type of bacteria or viruses. And that's how you identify the gap. So there is a gap in the current technology. And then you can say that the novelty of the current disinfection technology we developed will kill more bacteria, including Clostridium difficile, okay, or identify certain amount of different strands of bacteria where your technology or your technique can disinfect. So that is the novelty of your work. So once you identify the novelty, then you can address the objectives. The objective for the current work was to develop a new material which is used to, or which can be employed to kill Clostridium difficile. Okay, so that is how you write the introduction. So the background, with the proper literature support, so that you can write what is published so far. Then you can identify what is missing, and that is the gap. Then you identify the novelty and then objectives. So the methodology section, most important thing is that it should be reproducible. Fully complete and correct information should be given. All relevant details should be provided. Which means that somebody maybe after 50 years should be able to repeat your work or reproduce your results. So every single minute detail should be provided. For example, if you are developing a material, you stir for 10 minutes and left it without stirring for half an hour, and then stir for another 10 minutes. Rather than saying stir for 20 minutes, you say that stir for 10 minutes first, and then left it for 20 minutes, and then stir for another 10 minutes. Even that type of minute detail should be provided. A different type of compound could be formed if you leave it for 10 minutes. Because you don't know. You haven't done that yet. Okay? Unless you prove that you will get the same material, same type of material without any change if you do the reaction continuously for 20 minutes. Okay, that's why every minute details should be provided. The results should be the representative results. You don't have to give all the NMR or the DSC or all the surveys you have done if you are doing a social science or survey type desk-based studies. You should give the representative results, use high definition figures and graphs, move unimportant results to supporting information. Very importantly, it should logically progress to the next section. Okay, so you need to identify what results should give first. You need to have good quality figures and graphics. Very, very important. And discussion is your selling point. And what is the difference between results and discussion? Results are results. What you have observed, you have plotted. And discussion is you are interpreting the results for a third person and with the help of literature. You are giving proper justifications. You are supporting your results with previous studies. What are the added advantages there? And use of appropriate references. That's very, very important. Conclusions. Conclusions are not rewording the abstract. Abstract and conclusions are totally different. Conclusions means conclusions of your work. What are the conclusions of your work? Advances of the field from the state of the art. You can write a line on the future directions as well. Then you can write the references, cite the main scientific publications, recent articles, and avoid excess self-citations. We didn't mention about the abstract. So abstract means, abstract is probably the most important, as I mentioned earlier. So you have to pitch it. It's a pitch. So you have to have a line on the introduction. You have to say the novelty, state the novelty in the work. Maybe a sentence on the objectives. So the objective of the current work. Then you have to explain the results, the major results, a discussion, and a concluding line. Everything should be within 250 to 500 words. Okay. So I have just submitted my paper. What happens next? As we discussed, it will go to the editorial office, editor-in-chief, then editors or sub-editors, and then reviewers. So the Bible for writing a paper. What is the Bible for writing your paper? Are the results? No, it's the guidelines. So the other guidelines. That's very, very important. It's writing a paper is like playing football. You have to follow the rules. If it's not following the guidelines, it will return back. So read the guidelines first and check if templates are available. In most journals, they have templates. For example, if you are publishing RSC, SES, or Institute of Physics, they all have different types of templates available. If you Google it, you can find it. And your English should be very, very important. These are some of the misused words. So I'm going, take care of the English. So I'm going to skip a few slides here. These are two different styles of writing. You should write in plain English. Okay, this is not the place where you show your literature skills. This is where you are writing it for a reader, a scientific reader. So scientific writing is totally different. Any idea what the author is talking about? The potentially superior anti-plague and better surface active properties of amine fluoride, stannous fluoride containing mouth rinses were carefully investigated in a well-designed double-blind crossover study in 10 healthy volunteers. It's not fully clear, but if you write it in a different way, it was investigated the anti-plague and surface active properties of mouth rinses containing amine fluoride and stannous fluoride in a double-blind crossover study in 10 healthy volunteers. That's enough. It's plain English. Okay, so that is the way the readers would understand. You don't need to look in the dictionary for new words or lengthy or long words to improve the quality of the paper. Always simple English attract more readers. Write clearly and concisely. Avoid long-winded and complicated sentence. What do you mean by long-winded, complicated sentence? I have a video to show you. You may have seen this in Bangalore days. So I don't know if I can play it. Let me try. It'll take only a couple of seconds. Okay, so in Bangalore days, in an interview, this is Nivin Pauly, and he says, answering one of the questions, he was saying that this is because after a great consideration and consultation, I came to the conclusion that the socialist illusion was a great botheration to the Indian nation. Okay, so like, there's nothing technically wrong there, but it's a kind of long-winded and complicated sentence. You don't need to say that. You can write it in plain English. And once you write the paper, you have to edit, and edit. Okay, edit and rewrite. And you have to name the drafts in D1, D2, D3, and D27, D42, like that. Okay, so that every draft, it will be improved. Most importantly, avoid plagiarism. It is your thesis or your work or your paper. You should write it. And be careful when quoting other sources. So the cover letter, you have to write a cover letter. So in the cover letter, you should write the novelty. And you should say, why should it be published? And why should in this journal? And you should decide why is it a published or a specialized or multidisciplinary audience. Are you targeting? You might say that this will benefit both specialized and multidisciplinary audience of your journal. Okay, so the editor will be very happy to see that. The peer review process is a very tough process. Okay. It's a streamlined peer review process is like it's very tough. There were a lot of the editors first, then the reviewers, the editor again, the editorial board, and then the editorial assistant, and then after a series of beating, only the paper will be accepted, if it is accepted. Okay, and you may know that in many journals the rejection rate is over 80%. Okay, 80 or 85, in some cases 95% rejection. Okay, so you have to learn to live with rejection. So in order to conclude, the tips to publish high impact citations are the quality with the significant novelty and correct fit of the subject area, good impact, keep your readers in mind, also keep your reviewers in mind, and data analysis with a strong literature support, a thought-provoking discussion, a good conclusion, and lead to live with rejection. less than 30% of the paper will be accepted in many journals, but in some journals the rejection is much higher, 95. Only 5% of the paper will be accepted. So don't worry about the rejection. You submit another journal, and every time after getting the reviewer feedback, the paper can be improved. So don't be shy to send it to a journal. And then this is some comments to responding to the revision questions. You have to answer all the questions, comments. You have to write a cover letter. You have to develop a changes highlighted document so that it is easy for the editor and reviewers to see it. And if you have made any other corrections, you have to note that as well. And also learn from mistakes. Okay. So every time you write a paper, you make some mistakes, and then you have to learn from it. Mistakes are painful when they happen, but years later, a collection of mistakes is what is called experience. And some mistakes could be painful, so be aware of that as well. Like if you are a brain surgeon, you cannot say that I made a mistake. So always aware of the severity of the mistakes too. So if you see learning from this cartoon says that the gentleman is cooking again and he spilled, and then the wife was saying, I see you are learning from your mistake again. And this usually happens in my kitchen too. So finally, I like this movie, Mahesh in the Prathigaram. So the quote from there is that, Mahesh, photography cannot be taught, but you can learn it. In Malayalam, Mahesh, photography പഠിപ്പിക്കാൻ പറ്റത്തില്ല, പക്ഷെ പഠിക്കാൻ പറ്റും. So same way, the paper writing cannot be taught, but you can learn it. So with that, I would like to conclude and thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Professor Suresh. Can we go for some questions?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, we have some questions in the chat box. I'll read out them for you. Sheila Rani has a question like, logical progression sometimes cause deviation in focus of the main research. How to overcome this?
Yeah, so that should be a balance. So you need to understand the logical progression means that you need to decide what type of results you should give first, and that should be connected to the next one. So there's a trade-off between that balance too. So you need to, so you would be the best person to judge it. What should be given first and what should be given next. So as a researcher, you should justify it, what should go first and what should be the next. So the most important thing is that every part should be connected to each other.
Yeah, another question is from Shahina. She asks, what's the difference between academic writing and research writing?
Yeah, I think both are kind of same. Academic writing means it's a part of research writing as well. So if you're a scientist, so it's kind of scientific writing. So you use more kind of scientific words than the normal. So you are not writing it for a kind of general audience. You are writing for a specialized audience. So that's the difference between general writing and academic or research writing.
Dr. Revati Shivadas would like to know whether it is possible to publish a part of a thesis as an article, or how do we publish the thesis?
Yeah, absolutely. In many cases, a thesis could be 4 or 5 different articles. You can publish maybe chapter 3 could be a paper, chapter 4 could be another paper, chapter 5 could be another paper. In many countries, the thesis itself is a collection of 4 or 5 different papers. Absolutely, it is possible. And that is the way it should be.
Rashmi asks, what's the difference between citation and reference?
Citation means, what I meant by citation is that somebody else cite your work. Okay. For example, if somebody writing a paper, they are citing your work, so you will get a citation. Reference means that whatever you are giving at the end of the paper. You are referencing your work. Two different phrases, and it has different meanings.
Bismi Ananias, what's the things that you should keep in mind when writing a review paper?
Review paper, a very important thing. Review paper, I mean, people read review paper because they want to see the advances in that field in the past few years. Okay, so always be aware that you should be reviewing the past 5 years work mainly, but you should give a background about the previous work as well. So in a good review paper, you should address what has happened in the past 5 years.
So I have a question, sir. You said about publishing negative results. Isn't that easy to publish a negative result?
No, it's not at all easy. But there are special journals, particularly the open access journals, they publish negative results. And some of them could be paid journals also. But I'm a great fan of publishing negative results because if you don't publish it, the world wouldn't know that. If you go through that route, you cannot get results. So, in my opinion, all negative results should be published.
Yes, sir, that's it. So I would like to thank you for this wonderful session. And I think you gave a different perspective of looking at a paper, research paper, like that of a short story. Maybe also looking at a paper from the perspective of other people, how they look at our paper.
Yeah.
And one major thing I think you said was about how to start. That's a big problem, starting problem. And you gave a very simple solution to start with the procedures.
Yeah.
And also the importance of the detailed analysis of all the different parts of a paper from that. All the different parts of a paper from that. Yeah. Sorry.
One more question is there. Isha is asking.
Yeah, we can come to that. Yeah, I think.
Okay.
Question
Thank you very much.
Yeah, so there's one question in between. Could you elaborate on the mode of submission of a research paper to a reputed journal?
Yeah. So if you are submitting your paper to a reputed, I mean, I suppose it is a high impact journal. So the most important thing is that it's a cover letter. So the most important thing is your paper itself. So you need to have good novelty or innovation in that paper. It's properly addressed, a good literature report, a good conclusion, and excellent graphics. So these are very, very important. And also you need to have a good cover letter as well, saying that listing the novelty of your paper and also why this work fits in that particular type of journal. So these are the important factors before you submit to an impact journal.
So just one question. Yeah. Okay, thank you, sir. And I believe as an editor, you could explain what editors normally look into a paper.
Novelty is the main thing. The first thing I look is the similarity. Because from there itself you can see that any part of that work is published previously. So I get an authenticate report. So I open the authenticate report, all the papers, and see that how much similarity is with other works. Then I look into the paper and then see that I read the title, then the abstract, and from the abstract itself I can see that significant novelty is there. Once the abstract is okay, then I go through the paper and then mainly look into the graphics, and then read the discussion and also the conclusions, and look into the quality of references as well. So from there, I can see that whether the paper can be immediately rejected or send it to reviewers.
Thank you, Professor Suresh, for the interesting and the well-structured talk. And also a big thanks to all the participants in Google Meet as well as YouTube for your interest in the program. Thanks to Dr. Jacob Matthew, the principal of St. Berkman's College, for all the support and motivation in initiating this program and also for inaugurating the web series. Thanks to Dr. Joe Prasad Matthew and the research committee for organizing this useful program for researchers. I would also like to thank Dr. Ruben Philip, Mr. Jobin of IQAC, and the BTV team for the technical help. And before we wind up, just a reminder that tomorrow's session will be at 5 p.m. So thank you once again.
Thank you very much. I have a humble request when selecting the sorry, when you select the presenters or the speakers, I have a humble request that you should consider the gender balance as well, because the panel is full of men. So in future, if at all possible, please include
Women also.
if consider the gender balance as well.
Sure, sir. Sure, sir.
Thank you.
So
Thank you,
thank you,
sir.
everyone.
Thank you very much.
So